This is James Lindsay and Joe Rogan's interview from January 20th, and they're talking about different things going on in the schools, from the sexualization and promotion of sexual materials in the schools to basically to critical race theory and other forms of discrimination here.
Minor attracted persons.
Minor attracted persons. Yeah, those
Yeah.
accounts are all still there.
Yeah.
They're literally groomers.
Yeah.
And they're bringing those books like with literal depictions of graphic sex acts into schools. And
Now, is that
backing
real?
up.
Because is that something that they're actually bringing into school, or is that something like what is that?
Yes, it's real. And not only are they're not even just bringing it into schools. They're doing it in an underhanded way. And so they're actually bringing it in through the library. So these aren't like books like the teacher necessarily is reading through in class. They're available in the library, and they can be, kids will be told the books are in the library. And they depict this one. It's called Genderqueer. This is like crazy. I got in trouble on YouTube for even saying what's in this book. But I've seen the picture from the book. It shows, appears to be some kind of lesbian type relationship, or maybe it's non-binary. And there's a strap-on dildo on a minor, and another one performing oral sex on the strap-on dildo.
A minor?
They're children.
There's a child with a strap-on and another child performing oral. Okay, and this is a book that's in the library.
Yeah, there's another one I saw yesterday, and I apologize because I don't know what the title of it is because I only just saw it, where it actually shows people going down on each other like cunnilingus.
Have you ever shaved your pubic hair? They're holding hands. Nope. That's so brave.
Yeah, right there.
Brave. I thought it was
the
lazy.
Picture I'm talking about.
Right there. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. So that is supposedly a strap-on that looks like a penis. Right there. How do we know that? Oh, there it goes. Yeah. That is so insane.
So we wheel back to not just queer theory, but all these critical theories, right? Critical race theory, whatever. And they actually openly say, I mentioned that paper by Hannah Dyer earlier. They openly say that one of the targets that they have is childhood innocence. They say childhood innocence is a narrative that's created by people who have privilege and advantage. Like, you're a rich white guy or whatever, so your kids can grow up innocent. But if you're a queer kid, or if you're a black kid in the city or whatever, you can't grow up innocent. You can't grow up racially innocent. So they literally say that their target is to unmake childhood innocence. So what do? They expose them to adult sexual themes. They expose them in pre-K even to like racism themes. And a lot of parents, of course, are like, I don't think that's appropriate.
And what are they trying to accomplish with the goal of eliminating childhood innocence?
The goal is actually to destabilize the kid's identity so that they're groomable. That's identity without an essence in queer theory. And then they're groomable. You groom them into this stuff, and then they look at their parents' culture. They look at their parents themselves. They look at their parents' generation. They look at the parents' religion, and they say, that doesn't represent me. We need something completely different. So it's to just like in Mao's Cultural Revolution, and I mean that much more literally than you might suspect. It's to cut the tie between the continuity of culture up to that point, including the family, and to start a whole new culture afterwards. And Pol Pot called it Year Zero. I guess Klaus Schwab calls it the Great Reset. But the goal is to separate the new generation from the traditions and views of the old generation. For Mao, it was to destroy the so-called four olds: old culture, old habits, old customs, and old ways of thinking. Suzhou in Mandarin. And Mao had a whole program he used in schools, and I see something so similar to that in our schools now that I'm freaking out. And what he did was he separated, listen to this, you'll see it immediately. He created 10 classes of people. 5 of them were labeled black classes. They're bad. And 5 of them, because of communism, are red, and they're good. And so he had these categories, people who had lots of money, basically, people who are capitalists, especially landlords. And so those people are bad. And if you're like the son of one of those people or connected to one of those people, they're going to tell you at school, you're like the worst kind of person. And then they give you these red identities. Well, you can be a revolutionary. You can, peasant classes, day laborers, that's 1 or 2 of the red classes because it's communism. But then, you can become a revolutionary. Now, take out those classes like, landowner or whatever, and switch it out. White, straight, male, thin, fit, attractive, conventionally attractive, whatever, right? There's your black classes. So you start telling all these kids, for example, it's critical race theory stuff, or like I have this here, race Marxism. You start showing them, you start telling them that they are part of the racist superstructure of society, basically, that they're part of the systemic racism problem. And so their whole identity, generationally, if your parents are white, you didn't do it, it's not your fault, but you have all this privilege, blah, blah, blah. You have these kids who are like, well, how can I have a positive identity? And what do those look like? Well, you could be black, you could, or some other racial minority, you could be queer. And all of a sudden you have a pathway, a funnel into a positive identity.
Yeah.
But you give people a pathway. And where do you see the vast majority of these young people transitioning and seeking non-binary and bisexual and whatever else? Young girls, who are the most social status concerned, and white man is probably not going to get anything anyway. And so these young white girls are all becoming some kind of weird gender thing. Why? Because they're getting constantly barraged by critical race theory that says white is bad, white is complicit in racism, you're a racist, you can become an ally, that's a red identity, ally, racial ally. But you also have these pathways to where you get social status, and it's not enough that you're going to say, oh, I'm bi, or I'm pansexual, or I'm demisexual, or I'm whatever. It's not enough to do that. You now have to politically be active in that regard, or you're not authentically that. You have to be a revolutionary. One of the pillars of critical race theory is called a unique voice of color. They actually believe that you are morally determined, structurally determined, they call it, but it means morally determined. If you happen to be black and you live in a white supremacist society as they define it, then your character is shaped. So we listened to Martin Luther King, that's this week. His birthday was just the other day. We listened to Martin Luther King when we say, contents of character, not color of skin. But according to the critical race theory view, your content of your character is determined by the color of your skin. So that doesn't work. And you have to take on the politics that is being a critical race theory advocate or whatever for your blackness to count.
It's like, where does this go?
You can look at what happened with the Cultural Revolution, because we're playing out the exact same logic. And I mean the Chinese Cultural Revolution, not the American one that we're in the middle of right now. And so the goal is to install something that they have total social control, run by the goons who think that this is a good idea, so that we can become this one. It's not communism, it's a mixture of communism and fascism into one thing.
A lot of people watching this may wonder to what extent this is going on in their own schools, and it can be pretty overwhelming, frankly. Some schools aren't seeing much of this at all, if not at all, and others are under full siege and assault. But what I'm seeing and hearing from different parents and advocates around the country is that this is very much happening, and we saw it happen in Fairfax, Virginia, and we've heard from other parents like Asra Nomani and Harry Jackson and others who have reported back some of the experiences they've had. It's a little bit different in each school, and I think the theme is really understanding the academics and the history and the language behind this agenda, understanding that there is an agenda. It's very political in nature. It has also financial aspects to it, where people are taking advantage of the system to make a lot of money. And then there are, activist goals as well. And that's what really Dr. Lindsay gets into here, is just the depth of the academics of critical race theory and what some of the more nefarious goals are behind it.